Hello, hello, truth seekers all over the world. This is Matthew from Back to the Covenant, as you see. Thanks, Josh, for the backdrops. Awesome. So this is going to be a fun episode. I know I say that a lot. Not really episode. It's not really part of a series, but maybe it should be. So I'm going to have Josh from the Earth Brothers on. Surprise, surprise. If you watch any of my live streams, you know he's pretty much a ministry partner. I like to look at him, view him that way, and he's a dear brother too. So if you're not subscribed to his channel, you're not familiar with any of his work. In the description channel, the link in the description to this video. After the video's over, go subscribe to his channel and check his stuff out because he puts out amazing content regularly. So let's say what's up with some peeps in the chat, like I like to do, and then bring Josh on. Goodness, Matt, it's been a minute. Rusty. So what's up, Nitro Truth? I love the comment. We stand for monkeys, dude, no doubt. Brian Bechtel, Jay Fisher, turn the page. What's up, sir? Mr. Randy, Tracy Jones, Nabby Sky. There's Tyler, Tracy, Shurion, all the usual suspects, cover to cover. What's up, Jeremy? Let's see. There's Fusec Films. You might hear that again in a minute. Danielle, Modge Glenn. Woo! I'm chopping these names up. Kirsty. Let's see. Abazodio. There's my lovely bride. All right, let's see. One more. There's Wendy. David Lucy the second. All right, let me bring Josh on.
Hello.
I would say Shabbat Shalom to everybody that keeps the weekly Sabbath.
Glad to see you and be back in action for the first time in forever.
Whatever.
Feels like we went on retirement briefly, but now we're back.
Yeah, interestingly, this is not a Truth About Cosmology episode. Even though there is a cosmology aspect of this, it does relate to that.
You need it. They go hand in hand. If you don't have the truth about what we live on, or if you do have the truth about what we live on, I should say, you can't have this lie of evolution. Then it just becomes, okay, there's obviously a creator. So you need that chaos, that explosion, that sun worshiping model to bring this about. And so I'd put this on the back burner for a while just because of that. I thought, if I could just show everybody the truth about creation, then I don't have to worry about evolution. However, I'm in a battlefield with people who are teaching this as fact. And so you have to go after it. And I feel like there's some people you may never be able to convince that there's a firmament, that we don't have space travel and all of that. And so it's important to show them and the children who are also under those lies the truth about evolution, or the lie of evolution, and look at the evidence. And so that's what we're going to do.
We're going to examine some of their evidence or proof.
Yeah. So it goes right along with the standards that we teach, is to look at the evidence, examine the evidence, argue. It even uses words like argue, but when we do, they get upset when we start arguing the evidence and debating this stuff, because it's something that came about when there was a major bias in science. You had the people that were making the discoveries, every single one of them was a Darwinian evolutionist. When you look at their Wikipedia and it tells you about them, it'll say this was found in the 1800s after they invented this theory. This is someone who was an atheist and a Darwinian evolutionist. It's a lot like the same types of people we are battling when we are debating the proofs of creation, the fact that the world's immovable. It's that same spiritual aspect. And so they're going to start, of course, finding evidence that backs up what they believe, because they are making their own evidence. They're changing things. They're adding numbers and all of that. So it's going to be quite the fun journey exploring this evidence.
So-called evidence. And just full disclaimer, Matt is not an expert in this topic. That's why I have Josh on here, because he's been studying it for years. And sadly, he's had to endure, as a biology teacher and a science teacher in the public indoctrination camps, he's had to do his best to... You want to explain? You want to touch on that a little bit, like your approach when this topic comes up with your students before we jump into the presentation?
Yeah, the presentation I'm using is actually one that I've taken from the ones that it's a modified version of what I show my students. I'm going to show a lot of more of the proofs of creation in here, but it's a way to look at it that doesn't say what a lot of teachers are saying, which everyone I'm with right now currently says, is that we now have a lot of proof of evolution, and it's a fact, pretty much. It's not really a theory, that evolution on a macro scale, on this large scale, is true, that we have a common ancestor with the very first organism that ever existed, which was a single-celled organism. And then from there, on this tree of life that they always show us, and it's what they call it. They call it a tree of life.
Wow.
And so that's really a slap in the face to our creator, who actually
Yes,
is the real tree of life. So the enemy is always going to have their version of the truth. And so they've got their tree of life. And we're going to look at that, because I feel like that's something I need to put in some work to actually generate. And I'll go over that when we're doing the presentation, so you can get a visual of what I'm talking about. But I want to actually compile a long, almost like roll of tape, like a measuring tape, that contains every single living species ever recorded on it, and just let it unroll. I think this thing would go for miles. I don't know how long this thing would be.
yeah.
Miles and miles. And then have kids try to fill in the gaps for every little missing link for all of these creatures, trees, plants, shrubs, bacteria, everything, and see how many they can come up with. And then we can investigate the ones we do have and see how they fall apart, and then be like, that's how impossible this whole scenario is. It's absolutely impossible, even with billions of years.
Billions and trillions and millions.
The stardust. Yeah, I had a teacher say that. And it wasn't even in biology the other day.
Yeah,
physical science. And she played the whole video and talked about us being stardust. And I'm like, I can't escape it. Even in physical science, the whole Big Bang narrative, it's there too. It's in almost every science class you have.
So before we jump into the presentation, I actually have a couple really cool PSAs, or public service announcements. Let me get it up. All right, here we go. Come on. All right, here we go. Let's see. Make it fill the screen. So the first one is interesting and cool. So I just want to throw it out there and announce, since I haven't been doing a lot of live streams lately, and I'm doing the best with my schedule with that. So I got a lot going on with the coaching program I'm a part of. So I'm currently writing book number 5.
What?
Do what now?
Said what? Another book? That's crazy.
Another one. Albert gave me a gift, so I got to honor him with it. So, so look out for that later this year. And for anybody that's wondering, what's the topic, Matt? It's going to be on spiritual warfare. It's not going to be your typical, prototypical casting out demons and this demon groupings and all that. I'm going to take a much different approach with this book, and I'm going to touch on a lot of topics that I think believers need to work on. Because I've been walking in the Father's ways for about 20 years, keeping Torah and whatnot, and also believing in the Messiah. I don't just keep the Torah, and the Father's taught me a lot, and I've seen a lot in other people. So this book hopefully will encourage and equip people. And so the second PSA is really cool, and this one involves Josh, so I had to do it today while he was on. So the Origins Untold film premiere, which is the film that me and him are in, which is really cool, is going to be in Brevard, North Carolina on July 31st of this year, 2023. And the filmmakers are actually in the chat. Let me pull them up so everybody can go and subscribe to their channel. Come on, where are they at? I saw them in the beginning. Come on, I know you're there.
They vanished somehow. What happened?
Dude, they made one of the first comments.
They retracted it. Oh, there they are. They're kind of up there.
Are they in the bottom?
At 6:02 p.m.
6:02. All right, let's see. Hey, there they are. Okay, let me pull it to the side just so it's separate. All right, so everybody go subscribe to FewSec Films YouTube channel or find them on Facebook in any place that you can on social media. So they are the ones that they're a very talented couple. They are believers that walk in the Most High Scripture. So let's show out in a big way for this film premiere, and let's pack the theater in Brevard, North Carolina, which is an absolute amazing. You ever been there, Josh?
No, they said, I think is that near like Asheville, North Carolina? If it's near that, I've been in that
Yeah,
area.
it's not far. I'm not sure how,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I used to live in North Carolina for a year, so I drove through Asheville quite often.
Yeah, but me and my wife went to Asheville on our first honeymoon. That on the way back, we went through Brevard and other places close by, and it's a absolute beautiful part of the country. Like, there's a lot of people that go to Gatlinburg. I'd go to Brevard, North Carolina, way before any day of the week before I went to Gatlinburg. So let's all show up in a big way for the Fusex for this film premiere, because it's going to be awesome. And if you want to meet me and Josh in person, and
we'll be there.
And I don't know who else was in the film. I'm not going to throw out names and misspeak.
We're not supposed to throw out names because there's some big names. No, I don't. Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about, like, I'm not going to say so and so is going to be there.
Oh, and they just not show up.
Yeah, me and you are definitely going to be there. So if y'all want to
we'll be there with the family, dressed up nice, red carpet event.
Yep.
But yeah, it's going to really show support, because this is something we want to encourage people with their talent to do. This is like, I mean, they came in just two individuals working together, a married couple, young too, and they have passion, desire, and talent and knowledge. And the things they can do is really cool to watch. Me just watching and seeing how they do it was mind-blowing. And so we need to encourage that. We want that to prosper, and it's going to take all of us working together. You know, the fathers already worked it out to where they had funding and things worked out perfectly. So it was meant to be. And this is something we want to see more of. It's going to be more like a series. So part one is going to, this is called it's called, what's the full name of the whole thing? It's
Origins Untold.
Origins Untold, Ancient Cosmology. Is that right?
I think it's just Origin Untold.
Yeah, I thought they kind of added like the ancient cosmology aspect, so it could be like a unit, then, or like a series, and then you could have Origins Untold, you know, investigating the missing links or whatever they want to add on to that. So it can just be ongoing and grow support along the way. There's a lot of films have been successful that way, where part one, they had a low budget, and then part two, it grew, and then part three, it was massive. So we're hoping to see that, where they can keep doing this and do it full time instead of having to do what they're doing with weddings and everything.
I forgot. I got a video to play at the beginning. Apologize. So whenever we're talking about the topic of evolution, the phrase intelligent design always pops in my mind, and I think of a lot of things. So let me play a quick video of a bunch of scientists that are speaking out against intelligent design, because not everybody that's in the scientific community accepts evolution. So let's check out this video real quick. It's only a couple minutes, and then we'll check out Josh's awesome presentation. All right, we got it going just right. Let's get it.
As a scientist,
biochemist,
a geologist,
neuroscientist,
biologist, and an engineer,
I think there is overwhelming evidence for intelligent design in nature.
I see intelligent design in the history of life.
In the genetic code of life.
In molecular machines.
Let me stop it just for a second, just for the YouTube overlord, so they don't, you know what they do.
The complexity.
information embedded in living things.
In the operation of the human brain.
In the features of the human body.
In the chicken and egg causal circularity of life.
As a mathematician, I see great evidence of purpose in the universe.
As a molecular biologist, evidence for design everywhere I look. Nature incomprehensible without inference to purpose and to intelligent design.
The properties of the universe as a whole, and our planet in particular,
Now, for all my peeps out there that we know we're against the globe, just look past this section right here. Because this video is about intelligent design. It's not about the shape of the earth. So just listen to what the guy's got to say and just know he's talking about intelligent design in the lens of the globe. So just have to show mercy on that.
For our benefit.
In my view, the fossil evidence cleans to its intelligent design.
I see life as designed because when I look at life at the molecular level, I see exquisite engineering.
All cells contain DNA, which include lots of information. And information is only the product of a mind.
Darwin thought living cells were just blobs of jelly. But when I look in a living cell, I see evidence of factories, machines, three-dimensional architectures, enormous amounts of encoded information.
Generators, manufacturing plants.
Life contains many features that we know from experience only arise from the activity of intelligent agents.
The genetic code is like a software program. If somebody would have had to be a coder, would have had to form this particular genetic code. When I see that order and design, I have a really hard time believing that random mutation and natural selection alone can cause the complexity, the diversity we see in life.
When you look at nature at large, what you see is incredible examples of innovation which surpass human technology. Examples include the flight capabilities of a hummingbird, sonar in bats, and greater innovation always implies greater intelligence from a designer.
If you read the message from the molecules, it's really clear. They say clearly, intelligent design, intelligent design, intelligent design is the source of life.
And we would both say, amen. You there, Josh?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Look like you're froze, but I can hear you, though. It's all good.
I'm froze?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Darn. But he should be off the Wi-Fi.
All right,
I
do
may
your
have to
thing,
get a direct connection. But yeah, the thing is, when you start talking to people and that are debating this topic with you, and you talk about the first and how today, with all the things that we have, with all the scientists that we have, with all the cells that we have, we can't science and have them make a living thing. You can put all the pieces together, even wrap it in a cell, but you can't make it become a living thing, even with the given life ingredients. And so it's too complex for us to make. But their theory is that nature made this. And so when I bring that argument out, they're like, well, so mankind couldn't make it, so therefore our creator couldn't make it, And the argument doesn't really make a lot of sense to say that, well, since it's too complex for us to do, nature could do it and only nature. Then that's got to be a creator. Change over time is not going to make life. It's not a creator.
Yeah, I like how you got the globe on the first slide. Good job, Josh.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the globe. Add some airplanes flying around it because we got to include everything about the globe. But yeah, this is the question, the opening statement I have when I am talking to my students, that it's okay to ask questions and it's definitely okay to question answers, which is one thing that a lot of science classes don't like to be a common practice. They don't like you questioning things. It's like, well, the brilliant people figured it out. That is how it is. You guys are just students. There's no way you're going to debunk this stuff. And so there's kind of this hierarchy of there's wise people out there, and we're just at the bottom here looking at the wisdom that these people have already created. And so right away, doing that, to showing them, or I don't show them this. This is something that I show you guys, the complexity of life, but I should show them this. This is a verse that keeps coming to my mind this year when I'm dealing with other people that are causing these children to stumble. It's that verse in Matthew 18 where it says, may cause stumble one of those little ones, for believing in me, it is better for him that a weighty millstone may be hanged upon his neck and that he may be sunk in the depth of the sea. So it's painting a picture to me that it's not good to cause those little ones who are trying to walk the right way into believing that they're insignificant, that there's a big bang that's a creator, that you're just here because of an accident. And we do that. They do that to people. And then it's like, okay, now be passionate about learning. Why? It robs them of their passion because it robs them of a purpose. You can't have both. You can't have somebody walking around without purpose and then be passionate about learning and seeking and all of that. So right away, you can just watch their demeanors change. When I started feeding my kids the truth about intelligent design, they perked up. They got so excited. Our test scores were off the charts, and they were thinking that we cheated, but our kids were just excited about investigating evolution because they were seeing it with new eyes and seeing how these stories don't line up. They were looking at things like this moth or this butterfly here that when you show it to them, they go, oh, that's just a leaf. And then
It
you
sure
say,
looked
no.
like one.
Yeah, I would, if I walked across this thing in nature, I would never spot it. There's no telling how many of these things you've seen and didn't even know, because they even have artistically added bite marks as if a caterpillar has eaten it. Funny thing is, they came from a caterpillar, but they have these bite marks into their wings that aren't really bite marks. They're designed to look that way, and imperfections where a blind process of evolution would be painting this or crafting this and sculpting it blindly, and not like evolution has hands. It's coming from genetic code that was programmed to grow a caterpillar, and then at some point stop growing a caterpillar and change into something totally different. All of that's coming from the code that was put into this thing from creation, and it's been doing it ever since. Every butterfly has only given birth to butterflies forever and ever and ever. There's never been anything that we've ever witnessed in the history of all recorded history of organisms turning into something else ever. Okay, so to say that requires, or to try to, illustrate that requires animations. And that's where you have kind of the same stuff you see with NASA in our textbooks, where they animate the missing links. They always animate this stuff. And so they then show you these animated cartoon tree of life that we were talking about earlier. And so you have this tree of life, and they only have a handful of organisms on these, the enemy's version of the tree of life. And so they're not realistic. And when you try to look at all the organisms we have, let's just look at birds. Put that on a tree. That's not even every single species of bird. I'm sure they got a bunch of them on there, but that's just birds.
How many
you
are
start
there?
looking. We have butterflies. What's that?
How many birds were there? That looks like hundreds of thousands.
How many birds? Yeah, there's a lot. Like almost, you think about the size variations, the peacock, the way it looks, the male versus the female peacock. They look different. They have different genetic material, making them look different so that one can serve a different purpose. One can have the long feathers that attracts a mate. And so you have all these different attributes to even the different genders of these birds. A male cardinal looks different than a female cardinal. And you see that a lot in these organisms, which allegedly evolved from some common ancestor. And then you have things like the butterflies, which all of these weren't just born butterflies. They came from a different type of organism. They had a different purpose. They were just going around eating and storing up and consuming things. And then once they are reborn, essentially, when they come out and turn into butterflies, they have a different purpose. They're going around pollinating flowers. I mean, these things just look like something out of a science fiction movie flying around. They have the ability to fly, something that we sit around trying to do. And it's funny watching those flight fail videos when mankind's trying to create a plane. They're always crashing. And so evolution, something that's blind, that hasn't studied aerodynamics of anything, fly. There'd have been a lot of flightless, weird, flop-looking creatures going around getting eaten, because you can't run when you have big, giant wings like that stuck to you that don't function in flight. And so it's almost as if it was created to have that ability, similar to the fish. They all have those aerodynamics, the fins, all this. Try putting all of those ones just on the slides we've just seen into a tree of life, and it would start looking so crazy. The kids would go, this is impossible. So you just start piling them up. And I can't even get through like ants and spiders before this one slide is filled up. So I want to see if you could fill up an entire gymnasium or something, some wall with every species that's ever existed going into the plants. Because now we've just got, some of the insects and snakes. We haven't even gone into the all the other different types of organisms we have, the bacterial and all that. But a tree of life like that would automatically silence the whole tree of life that they give us that looks very pathetic and has just a handful of organisms every single time, so that kids go, oh, I can see how that's possible, on that tree of life. But in reality, it's not what it would look like if it were a real tree of life, and if that was a real actual way that everything got here, it would be quite different. All right, and now after the whole tree of life investigation, you look at the age of the Earth. That's one thing that I want that you can destroy pretty easily, and that's what I like about this topic, is that you can look at what the mainstream science tells you and actually disprove it real simple, and like simple techniques and actual provable things that people have already done. And so we're going to see that evidence. But when you Google how long or how old are fossils according to the mainstream science, or you look up how old they are in general, it says that all types of fossils, it says one thing all types of fossils share is they require the dead organism to be trapped underneath layers of sediment. This is what makes the fossilization such a rare event. If the organism is left exposed after death, it will usually be destroyed by decay and scavenging before it has a chance to be fossilized. But under the right conditions, fossilization can occur relatively quickly, in the ballpark, it says relatively quickly, of hundreds of or thousands of years. So it takes a long time. So when you go into the thousands of years, hundreds or thousands of years, that's usually their estimates put you beyond the starting point for creation when they talk about fossils. But there are fossils out there that totally destroy the thousands of year narrative, like this millions of year old hammer. This thing was found, it says here, it's an iron hammer with a fossilized wood handle, and it was found by Max Hahn near London, Texas in 1934. And it was in a Cretaceous rock formation that's supposedly over 140 million years old. So if they had found any type of shell fossil or fish fossil in that layer, that's how old we would be told that it is. But they found this hammer, and now you have this time travel narrative. I remember watching or seeing internet things talking about this hammer before I knew about all this stuff, saying, is this a sign of time travel? Find out next, on this episode of Ancient Aliens or whatever it was a part of. They start tying in time travel. The same thing happened with this cowboy, fossilized cowboy foot that was also found in Texas. So Texas is a really good environment for these things to fossilize with the minerals they have there.
Let me jump in, Josh. I think Kent Hovind calls this the limestone cowboy. Instead of the rhinestone.
Yeah.
Fossilized.
He's a limestone cowboy. Yeah, I mean, the poor guy. I mean, I really wonder what happened to the guy, but he definitely served a purpose. If he could only know that his fossilized foot destroys the evidence of this whole ancient fossil narrative.
Evolution,
and it's all it's like this. It's the same boot. I mean, it's the same type of boot we had in modern times around the 70s. People were wearing those types of boots. So it could be in the ballpark of 10 years or less for this thing. And so I think, that right there narrows it down pretty good. I just really wonder what happened to the guy to lose that foot, walking around like a
something
pirate.
bad.
Definitely something one thing that destroyed. There's a video, Matt, the one it's rapid fossilization with the little rings on it. The one, not the Kent Hovind video, but the other one. You could pull that one up, and that'll show some more examples by the Lost World Museum, John Adolphe.
Are you talking about the Kent Hovind video?
No, the one with the pipes that have been cross sectioned right next to it. Should still be there.
You talking about the email?
No, it should be under the slides, or down there with the slides. There's the Kent Hovind video, and then there's the other one.
Oh, it's the other one. Okay, so you want me to play that now?
Yeah, play that, because that's another one that really destroys it.
All right, here we go, folks.
Some good stuff.
Question about a dinosaur bone I'm going to show at the end. From Karlovy Vary in the Czech Republic, mineralized water went through these pipes and formed this in 80 years. Here's a spark plug in stone, no more than 20 to 40 years to form this. This little guy right here was put into a mineral springs in Karlovy Vary, and within just 6 weeks, turned to stone. And this right here, stalactites and stalagmites in those caves that they say are millions of years old. This right here took 6 months to form. Here's the question. Here's a dinosaur vertebrae. If these right here can form in that length of time, anywhere between weeks to months to years, how long does it take to fossilize a dinosaur bone? If the creationists are right, then it's 4,500 years, no older. What do you think?
Pretty cool. And that's a guy, he's got a different belief. He believes like in the dinosaur narrative 100%. I think he rejects book like Enoch. And so I think, in my opinion, when people say you're showing the stuff about dinosaurs, that means you believe in dinosaurs. I don't believe that they are obviously as old as they say they are, but I believe that a lot of the bone fragments we find today are remnants from the Nephilim, the different classes of giants you read about in Enoch. There was 3 different kinds of giants. And so I believe it's the bones from them. And when you look into why we don't have a complete set of bones, it's the funniest thing. They say, well, it appears, a lot of them washed away. Why would bone wash away? What would cause a bone that's as big as, a couch to wash away? Yeah, it would have to be some sort of rapid flood,
cataclysmic
bones away.
event.
Yeah, something that was, floodgates of heaven pouring down, very powerful flood. And so they don't have a complete set of these dinosaur bones whatsoever. So you can go ahead and pull up the presentation again, and I'll go through that, because there's some really, really interesting things when you start digging into.
Well, I had a question about that video.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
So what was I hearing him correctly that the teddy bear on the left started fossilizing in 6 weeks?
Yep.
Did I hear that correct?
Yeah, I think it was around that time. They actually hang them from a string at the bottom of this little cliff, and the water just runs down until the minerals from the rocks hit it. And it doesn't take long at all. They do hats. He's got this fossilized top hat. I mean, it's like a rock, this hat. It's really cool. And so it doesn't take long.
It doesn't matter about the material the stuff's made of.
No, as soon as it starts getting covered with it, it just becomes like stone. It's really cool how it does that.
Wow.
And it doesn't take millions of years. I mean, people do this and they sell those little things as cool little, gifts for people that travel to that area. Like, here, look at this. It's like a famous spot where they do that, and they have things hanging down like crazy. People put whatever they want to turn into a fossil. I'm not really sure where it's at, but you could probably do it almost anywhere where they have a cliff with water dripping down constantly.
Yep. I know a place where I could do it in North Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bitty like waterfall, but it trickles all the time. So I could do that, but it's a little ways away. But that was a very interesting video.
Yeah, it's got like 1 million followers on TikTok. That's where I found him, and I had him come on and go over his proofs. And man, he's got some cool stuff. Our beliefs don't align 100%, but he's a real humble guy, and I'm hoping he'll find a lot of the things that we've already discussed about creation and all of that to unpack. Evolution is one small part of the puzzle, but it goes hand in hand with the other. But here's another example that fossilization doesn't take long. When you have an octopus that's fossilized, which should be impossible with the timeline they give us with fossils being, because they don't have bones. An octopus has 0 bones. Within a couple of weeks being on the bottom of the ocean floor, it would be gone. And so this is something that would be impossible if it didn't happen so quickly. And so a flood coming along, encasing this thing in a large layer of mud, and that rapid fossilization process taking place is what makes this possible. So this is one of those other examples of why the whole fossilization is bogus when it comes to thousands of years. And so the evidence or the definition of evolution is just change over time. I make sure Mike know that. None of these phones are phones. These came from other phones. They have a common. Okay, most of us remember, us old folks remember dial-up phones. Where you had the phones with the circular front. What were those called, Matt? Do you remember? I can't remember. Rotary phones or
I think it was rotary.
Rotary phones. Remember
I wasn't
having
alive
those?
then.
Yeah, that was when you went to your grandparents' house. They had those. And then we eventually had the cordless phones, but yeah, things changed over time. Now we got the touch screens. Eventually it'll be smack dab in the palm of your hand, probably. So again, this is one thing that I rate over and over is that change over time is not a creator. Evolutionists will even tell you that. Well, we don't know how that first cell came into being, but after it did, then evolution became a creator.
Yeah, that's
So
the
it's
thing.
like,
That's the thing. They don't know the origin, like of the first cell that they point to. They don't know where it originated from. So
yeah, or
that
what
should be
it
a
was
red
made
flag.
of. Yeah, because it would have to be made of the same thing other cells are made of now, because the cell parts that we have don't exist in nature. They are only made by the cell. And so for them to exist, they say, well, that first cell didn't have a real cell membrane like we do. You know, it had to have had something different. Well, how did that make another cell membrane for another cell? Because it would have to be replicating all of its parts to make other cells. But as far as creating life, if you ever see an article out there that says scientists create life, dig into it. Look at what it really says in the fine print. It'll say, oh, they took an existing cell and they modified it. Because that's all we can do to life. We can modify it. That's what they were doing in the days of Noah. They were modifying life. They were corrupting all flesh. That's what we're doing now. We're injecting even all sorts of stuff that you would assume they wouldn't do. They're doing insane, complete code, things like that. It goes beyond computer code. Computer code is nothing. The laptop that I'm using now wouldn't even genetic code inside of one cell of my body, because my laptop can't grow another laptop.
Nope.
It can't do any of those things. It can just exist as long as it has a power source, me plugging it into a wall. You take that away, it dies out. It serves no more purpose. But your cells, if you were to cut yourself, can heal your body based on their design. If I knock some of my keyboard keys out, they're not going to heal and grow back or fix in any way, no matter how much time. Evolution can't save your laptop, and evolution can't heal your wounds. It takes cell division and that genetic programming you to start growing heart cells when your skin's trying to heal up. It's replicating with only the same types of cells that were already there, but they weren't always that type of cell. That once you were just developing in the womb and your cells were diversifying as stem cells to become what they are. But you see that so-called, I guess, fingerprint of a creator when you look at things like our fingerprint, the tree rings, the way that a human lung looks a lot like an upside down tree when you look at the inner workings of it. And
It's
we
very
take,
interesting.
yeah, and we take what they make. You know, we make what they take. We would had to have evolved together and had them along right side with us, evolving at the same time. If we just evolved and there were no plants, we wouldn't have been able to evolve in the first place, because that's where we get our oxygen. And so all of this stuff would have to be so accidental and just not just accidental, but lucky, very lucky to have heterotrophs, organisms that consume and need oxygen, with these autotrophs that make oxygen, have to be happening simultaneously at the same time. And then you just look at one set of systems for us intelligently designed creatures. We have our digestive system, skeletal system, nervous system, musculoskeletal system, cardiovascular system and blood vessels, respiratory systems, endocrine systems, and your skin, which is called an integumentary. That word is so hard to say, it always trips me up.
Yeah, it is.
Reproductive system. And all of these systems, even your excretory system, when you break them down, they're all working together perfectly. And you start breaking them down to the microscopic, they get even more complex from there, it seems like. You can't stop seeing complexity just because you zoom in under a microscope. It actually gets worse for that narrative. Things like sperm, in order for them to have evolved to make it to where they need to go to fertilize an egg, they would need to have known that they needed to pack food for their journey. They were designed with fructose packed in there to give them energy so that they can swim. And not only that, they have an extremely advanced motor system connected to their flagellum that has like 40 different motorized parts. And that gets into irreducible complexity that is really fascinating, because if you remove one of those parts, the sperm doesn't work. You know, you take off the propeller of your boat, you're not going anywhere. It doesn't matter how massive that engine is. It needs all of those parts. And so for the sperm to be missing any of those, we wouldn't have been able to reproduce. So they all had to be there, swim far enough to get to the. And so not only that, the female who's produced eggs, she can't just release all of her eggs like ancestors did, where they spit out, you know, hundreds of. They're like this fruit tree, but they release one egg per month. And so that sperm finding that egg and the ability is really incredible. The way that timing is, the way everything works out. They're born with all the eggs they're going to have, but they don't start shedding them until adulthood. And it's one egg per month, not all of them like a fruit tree that cast out all of its fruit. It's designed the way it was so that we can produce and have children throughout most of our adult lives. And then there's a time when that no longer happens, because our Creator knew that there's going to be a time where we're too weak and feeble to be giving birth, taking care of children, and doing all of that. And so it's a perfect timed system to where when you're too old to have children, then it stops working.
And another part of the body is the eye. It's so insanely complex.
Yeah.
And I like when it comes to the eyeball and just all the insanely amount of cells with it, it screams intelligent design to me. Just the eyeball, not even looking at the brain and all its complexity.
Just that this year is we have banks coming to our school and taking a lot of blood from people. And I've donated blood, and a lot of people out there have. And I never thought about, how does my body know to put the right amount of blood back into my body and then stop? Don't overflow it, but just stop right there. And not only that, where does my blood come from if blood cells don't have a nucleus? They don't replicate like the cells in your body. Like if you cut yourself and it heals, your skin cells have a nucleus and they divide when those chromosomes line up. It's called mitosis. But if you don't have a nucleus in your blood cells, they're not going to divide like that. And so they're made in a part of your body that you would not think. If you looked at your body and said, where does blood come from? You'd probably think maybe your heart, maybe something else, maybe your liver. No, it comes from your bones. Your blood comes from the inside of your bones. That is weird. It comes from that organ. Your bones producing red blood cells, and it's in the bone marrow where that blood comes from. But what signals it to go? They always give hormones credit. They're like, okay, a hormone gives a signal that your body needs blood. It needs X amount. It needs 2 liters. It needs 1 liter. It needs however many it needs to fill up. And then the signal stops. Well, if that's not cool enough, you go back to when we are old and you're doing those little ultrasounds and trying to find signs of life. A fetal heartbeat can be detected at as early as 5.5 weeks. So you're
That's amazing.
Seed. That's how small you are. You don't even have bones yet, but you have enough blood and a heartbeat to pump that blood. That is really cool. And that to me right there shows that there is such a design feature that even before you have bones, you can have a heartbeat. And now that we're old enough to have, we still have a heartbeat, but we have bones and we're big enough, we're fully developed, and our blood can come from there. We take for granted that there is a complexity to our design that even before our hearts were beating, the Father gave us what we needed to have that beating heart, to have the breath of life flowing through that tiny little, microscopic heart. Just to imagine the size of that is mind-boggling.
Let me jump in real quick, Josh. And
yeah, go ahead.
I got an appropriate comment with this slide. So I've seen, I forget the guy's name in Arizona. He's a preacher. He'll go to, I don't want to say the name of the abortion clinic, but sadly, people that believe in evolution believe that babies inside their mama are just a bag of cells. After seeing this slide and hearing what you're saying and doing other research on this myself, I don't buy that. I wasn't a bag of cells at 5 weeks when I was in my mama's belly. Sorry.
They call it fetal tissue. Fetal tissue. The heartbeat that's intelligently designing and becoming what we are now. And it's just that we don't, from the when we zoom in with ultra technology camera and see these things, the design, and we can't even figure it out. We don't know how that one cell became all those different types of cells, how the heart cell knew to go where the heart's going to be, and the brain cells go where the brain's going to be, and everything ends up being perfectly symmetrical unless there's some sort of altering involved, unless there's some sort of outside factor, the radiation and all the different things that cause birth defects. Without that, without mankind intervening, it would always be perfect as is. Option of flesh, altering DNA. That's the one. As a biology teacher teaching about DNA, I thought we had photos of the double helix, but the best we can do when you start zooming in is you can see this is a chromosome. We can zoom in on the chromosomes, but we can't see the double helix. We have to show animations of it. It's like the globe. We have to have animations. And the clearest picture, people say, yeah, we do. We have a picture of it. Yeah, here it is right here. Show me the double helix.
Yeah, that's super clear.
It's crystal clear. It looks like a hair. It
looks like clear as mud, as they call it.
I could tell somebody this was hair from a murder scene. They would believe me. It's coiled up DNA, they tell us. And the red arrows are pointing to the double helix. Can you see the double helix? No. That is the clearest photo to date, they tell us, that we have of DNA. And they are able to give us things that are RNA, forms of RNA. I know I can't say a whole lot on here. That can go and alter that. And it's okay. It's for your own good. Going to alter the breath of life in the hands of the creator with something. Feel free. But here is the clearest. This is kind of like the NASA stuff. The clearest image of a cell made by animators, obviously. But they use data. They say they use data of what a cell should look like if you could see all the parts, if they were all crystal clear. And that's what they show us. And this stuff is all working together.
Do they work in the same department as Robert Simmons?
Yes. Yes. It probably was him that actually made this because he used data sets.
Yep.
And some specular highlights to make some of these things look round, spherical. And he
couldn't resist myself.
Yeah. All pieces spilled and fed without eyeballs, making the cells inside the cell and all the packaging, because we teach cell parts as if they're factory parts. The mitochondria is the powerhouse. And you have little different names for all these different parts for the endoplasmic reticulum. And we look at them like these machines.
Golgi apparatus.
Yeah, the Golgi. It should let us know that we're talking about machines here, machines that have a purpose, that had to have had a creator because they are programmed to do what they do. It's not just random, cells dividing at random. These things have a certain time when everything's matched up perfectly with the chromosomes that they pull apart. And when you say, well, how did it do that? They go, well, it's a form of magnetism. Okay, well, I know how magnets work. When they stick to each other, they stay stuck to each other. They don't all of a sudden pull apart and become two different magnets. You don't take parts of one, all of a sudden it becomes two magnets. These things are extremely complex. These systems of inside our cells that work together. But here's sort of what we were talking about earlier with the paleontologist never finding a complete dinosaur. We're about to get into that. And
very interesting.
What's that?
I said this is very interesting in the context of talking about dinosaurs.
Yeah. This to me aligns with the Book of Enoch's version of the Clash of the Titans, how the fallen had to watch their sons or their offspring fight it out, because it said, and then there was a flood that followed. But you have it here. It says often parts of the skeleton is missing, either because the bones were washed away there during deposition, or because changes in the earth tectonic forces destroyed them. So they weren't destroyed by some sort of battle and a flood. They're just tectonic plates and them just washing away, which washing away usually requires water, mudslides, landslides, something moving across the surface. And these aren't just small little animal bones we're talking about. A lot of bones, like there's a that's as big as bigger than a 6 foot tall person, does not look like a flood or a breeze of wind or something could have washed the whole thing across. This takes two.
Wait, hold on. Can you go back to that last slide real quick?
Yeah.
So this is interesting because I've been in quite a few museums, like you know how you go on those field trips when you're in elementary school and whatnot, and they have these full size like T-Rexes and all these dinosaurs. Like they got all the bones there, 100% of them. Like it's complete evidence. We have all the bones, and then you show this slide, it's like, uh-oh, what do we do with that?
Yeah. What do we do? Yeah, because everybody argues with me when I say we don't have a complete skeleton. They'll say, yeah, they found a complete T-Rex. And I'm like, show it to me. And they don't have, I've never had anybody actually send me photos of this complete T-Rex that was found recently.
That's very telling.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, so now after all these 100 years, we still don't have a full set. But these people, the modern sources on Google here are telling us that we don't have a complete set. A dinosaur skeleton has never been found. We've got movies about them, cartoons about them. They're on all of your kids' clothing. Go to the kids section in any store of clothing. It's going to have dinosaurs
and space
or spaceships. That's it.
Yep.
That's the main themes: dinosaurs and spaceships. On those, that's some of the main things. And of course, you got like your Disney stuff. But paleontologist, a guy who was out there looking at these fossils, and he's not the only guy. There was a lady. I've got a picture of one of her findings as well that did the same exact thing. Was fired. This guy, his name's Mark Armitage, and he was one of their lead people in the microscopy department, where he was looking at things under a microscope and dissolving the bones. And what he found was sawtooth. They fired him. There he is, right there. Out his work. He does a lot of his work to the educators. He'll bring them bone specimens. He'll let them break them down, look at them. He doesn't hide his work. But when he goes out trying to get access to any bone specimens of like a T-Rex or anything to see if there's soft tissue, they won't let him do it. He's offered these people, or not him, but other people are kind of behind him. Get your
maybe because it destroys evolution.
Yeah, they're all good. So it's not about keeping this stuff locked up. These bones, when you start investigating them and trying to find out whether or not the dinosaurs were even real, it gets real sketchy. And I think the reason there's so much secrecy is not because these bones aren't parts of real bones. It's just that they could be investigated to prove that the world is far younger and that these things didn't come from the types of creatures they say they did. And there could have been giant creatures pre-flood. The corrupting of all led to a lot of things. And who knows what they were farming and growing in those days and what they were doing to life. And but if somebody's looking for those bones, those are the ones that find the people who are the winning evolutionists. And I think that one of the reasons, one of my theories is they find these bones if body the washing away of the flood, but they get people in the right direction. And people finding them back then, they're not up everywhere or digging up the entire world, making highways and interstates and quarries and all of that, because these unclean spirits know exactly where they are. And that's why people like Mark Armitage here was fired. And
hold on, Josh, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're talking about bones and them hiding stuff. So I don't know if you have this in your slides, but the Smithsonian, hopefully it won't get dinged just for saying them.
Yeah.
So they have a bad habit of when Nephilim or giant bones are found in different places in like Native American reservations and all over the world. And they like to hide them because super tall giants is another angle that destroys evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been a big cover up that anybody invests, they see that anytime something they're never this fall on this date. Now where is it? Nobody knows. They were sent to the Smithsonian, and a lot of these people that were finding these missing links were working with the Smithsonian in places like that. That's where they were getting their money. That's why there was a war to find it. It was like gold. Don't try to find it worthless. You go to find it because you're going to get riches. And that's what these people were getting. They were getting riches for finding these missing links, and not even finding them, just making them out of whatever bones they could find, petrified bones that were probably like that fossilized cowboy foot. They weren't that old, but they found them, and they made their names and got famous with that, and jobs at their institutions. But I won't read this entire story about Mark Armitage, but long story short, he was fired after his discovery, and they told him that let's see, let me read this top part here. It says the biology department, even some students, because it indicates that the dinosaurs roamed the earth only thousands of years in the past rather than going extinct 60 millions of years ago. And since some creationists like Armitage believed that the Triceratops bones are only 4,000 years old at most, Armitage's work vindicated his view that these dinosaurs roamed the planet or the plane relatively recently, according to the complaint filed in July 22nd. And this is an older article here, but it says the lawsuit cites the discrimination for perceived religious views. Armitage's findings were eventually published in a reviewed scientific journal. And this is what they told him. It says, according to the document, shortly after this soft tissue discovery, a CSUN official told Armitage, "We are not going to tolerate your religion in this department." So their religion is the ancient goes on a is not a religion, but him finding something that's testable, provable, that shouldn't happen with the ancient billion or millions of years narrative. They told him to keep his religion in the department. And so imagine you find this discovery that rewrites what mainstream is telling you, and you can't be excited. You can't be like, look what I just discovered. This backs up my theories. One of my educated guesses. This is an educated guy, but you can't be educated and have an educated guess if it goes against what they're trying. So
yep.
It's really. He's been a published scientist for over 30 years, but he was let go abruptly and claimed his appointment at the University of 38 months had been temporary. That's what the university said, and claimed that a lack of funding was the reason. So, yeah, he made a discovery, but now we lost funding for the poor guy. Sorry. So that'll Mark Armitage. Here's another what's Mary Schweitzer. She found 2006. This is one of those things that helped inspire the whole part possibility and those ideas, because people seeing that you can see these things, and they thought, well, if we're seeing what looks like a red blood cell, maybe we can clone these things. Maybe we can somehow implant that into an egg and see what happens. And so that there is a Tyrannosaurus Rex found in Montana. It's dug up. Its fragments were dissolved in acid. That's similar to what Mark does. And that was in North Carolina, or where they did that in the lab. The T-Rex was found in Montana. So not a really good environment for preserving. They didn't find this in Antarctica, somewhere buried under snow. This is Montana. And places like that is where Mark finds his things. And some of the bones are actually vacuum chamber. These things are exposed to the element bugs and things, and they still have when they're dissolved because they're not that old. So really
that's not a good environment for preservation.
Yeah, definitely not. Pretty rugged, and there it is. But here is some artifacts that match what the Bible says, and you should be able to show these things to your students. As a teacher, you should be able to say, There's some evidence that matches a younger Earth, and here's some evidence that matches a mass exodus. The
Why are you
chariot
not
wheels
open to it?
at the bottom of the ocean. And you're not allowed to really talk about these things. And so I say if we look at it, it's not a religious thing. We just look at a historical thing. And here, history book told us this event happened. And not only that, there's melted sand on the shoreline, where that book also spoke of a pillar of fire. And then you go over how hot the sand would have to be to melt like that. You know, over 3,000 degrees. And you'll see what looks like footprints in this stuff. Melted sand. And so a pillar of fire, extremely hot, covering this shore, could do that. But I don't think there's any entire shoreline that doing that. Now, everybody in the world if perpetuating false evidence. I don't know if intelligent design people who have the money or technology to go out an entire shoreline for the sake of proving that the Red Sea crossing happened. But this was something that's just been there for thousands of years. The locals have known about it, but it's not really been that big of a deal in the education world. Nobody ever talks about it. I didn't hear about it until, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe.
It's some of that stuff they sweep under the rug.
Yeah. And we're creating this. If the Illuminati wrote the Bible, or whoever has wrote the Bible, they've also done a lot of work to do things like this and just keep it secret. Why would they go through all that work? If they were writing the Bible, having it banned at the same time, why? If it was their book. And so that's a big argument against the whole fake. It was written by people to control us. Well, if that's the case, the evidence that proves it's real, why don't they make that mainstream? They would want us reading that book.
Such nonsensical argument. It makes no sense when people say that.
Yeah. not that there's not translation issues sometimes, and of course agendas with those translators.
That's totally different though.
Yeah, but that's them just making a book that has verifiable. When you start investigating it, and here's just a funny meme. I like this one.
Yeah, I thought this was funny.
Yeah, the whale saying, "How are we ever going to evolve if you keep pushing us back into the ocean?" Well, there's a reason, because you always die at the shoreline. We've never seen whales just all of a sudden start crawling, which that would be kind of freaky if they did.
Yeah, it would.
Pushing their way out of the water. Okay, so I'm going to try to go fast through the fraud because there's a lot of it. The fraud is why.
Maybe you can save some. Maybe we can do part 2 and you can save some.
Yeah, we can save some of this for part 2 because the fraud is overwhelming. My brother got me into this before The Truth About Creation. When we were looking at, because I was actually for the first time being in biology classes full time, and he goes, "Have you ever looked into the embryo drawings and how those were a hoax?" And I was like, "What? The ones that we saw when we were in school?" He's like, "Yeah, there's, those were fraudulent." Well, I started doing some digging because these drawings made me look, us humans, people look a lot like other organisms during embryonic development. And you see it in textbooks saying that it's a fact that these early development of fish, birds, and humans being similar indicates that these shared a common ancestor. That's the answer on every test. When you see these fake embryo drawings, that's the answer they want your kids to pick. And they show, they copy and paste his drawings. And if you don't know anything about the artist here, Ernst Haeckel was a racist Nazi scientist who believed the white people were like a super race, and
his stuff is in the textbook still today.
Yeah, and it's a sad story, and I've shared this with my department, and some of them I think one of them actually listened and took the pictures out of their lessons, but the rest of them, they still use them.
Wow!
But here's the original drawings, and you're going to see copies of these throughout textbooks like crazy. But there's the guy. This is from the 1800s. Okay, this is not new. It's been proven fraudulent over 100 years ago. Somehow, there's no bias in science whatsoever. They still keep these fraudulent drawings in our text. Here's an example of actual photos below and the drawings above. They look nothing alike. This guy's either a really bad artist or he's just a liar. And I'm going to stick with the fact that he's a liar because there's no looking anything like the ones he drew.
I'm going to second that motion.
Yeah. Yeah. He's an embryonic liar. That's what the newspaper article said. And that's an old newspaper article. He was exposed when real photos of these things came out. But the evolutionists will say, well, it's okay. He's illustrating his point, and it's okay to do that if it supports your theory. And
it's okay to lie? Wow.
It's okay to support your theory, and that there are some similarities here, that it's okay to stretch the truth a little. And I say, no, you're deceiving children. Let truth. Let them only look at real photos. We don't need cartoons anymore. We have photos of these things. Why use cartoons when we have photos? But that's not where he stopped. His drawings didn't stop at embryos. He drew people. He drew the missing, excuse me. He drew the missing links, with number 12 being the full-blown gorilla creature. Number 11 is your Jewish-looking guy. Because remember, this is Nazi Germany here. So the Jew is it flattens out for number 10 and 9. Your typical ape, and then it's like, but kind of mixed with a person that just didn't shave, like your home. And then day 5, you start your black person, your African American, have like there's looking person number 2, and fully evolved super race number 1. 100% is not science. And even his people that worked with him said, yeah, his drawings, they're not based on his beliefs. So no scientific evidence to support what he believes. He drew other organisms like that, the little pygmy people, and
those
even drew
animations.
Yeah, but he was a good artist, and so his work was getting put out there everywhere because he was a good artist, putting out a lot of drawings. And so he got famous pretty quick, and it led to some sad things. I've talked about this one a lot of times. Ota Benga, a little kid, a little child, put on display in the Bronx Zoo, the zoo that's still there, in 1906, for people to come look at. And they made a lot of money because everybody was wanting to see the missing link between ape and man, because this child had his teeth filed down by his parents to make him look. It was like their tribal thing. It was one thing they did. It was, I'm sure, it made you more prestigious to have this. But when they saw him, they thought, heck, let's take him back to America. This is a missing link, or we can at least present him as such and fool a lot of people and make a lot of money. And that's what they did. But sadly, Ota Benga ended up killing himself like 10 years later. Because,
wow,
I mean, just think, he was put on display at a zoo with a monkey. They gave him a monkey. There were larger apes in there. And so they gave him a bow and arrow to defend himself. And he actually was getting made fun of by people and started shooting arrows at the people. So they had to take away his little bow and arrow.
Wow.
That's crazy. Kind of almost justice to those that were just there making fun of him. Somebody should have stepped up. And eventually, I'm sure, doing something evil here. Let's get out. To eventually get him to go to his country because that's where he wanted to go. And there was a war that broke, so unable to kill himself. So very sad story. But this
that's
stuff
evil
that happens thanks to the false science, thanks to evolution telling us the lies that it tells us. This stuff can go unchecked. We don't believe we're all created equally. We believe that some of us are highly advanced, highly evolved. So that leads to all sorts of different discrimination, like you're seeing now with the manipulation of the genes with certain things that are going on in the medical field. We're now having different types of discrimination. But Ernst Haeckel himself, he claimed that spontaneous generation had to be possible, meaning life could appear out of thin air, out of mud, out of a dead organism. Maggots can just appear. And he says that it must be true, not because it had been proven in the laboratory, but because otherwise it would be necessary to believe in a creator.
So there's the agenda.
Yeah. So he actually, he knew that, hey, this stuff had to be possible. Otherwise we have to have a creator. And the whole life spontaneously just appearing got debunked with.
Yeah, that's where the whole moral issue comes in with evolution. Is if they don't believe in evolution, there's a creator, and then there's morals that come with serving the creator. So that's a big reason why people like Richard Dawkins and all these big name evolutionists and people that are not big name evolutionists is they don't want this moral compass. They just want to follow their heart and do whatever they want, and they can do that if they believe in evolution. But if they don't, they have an issue. So there's a moral aspect as well to this topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's the missing link aspect is a big part of their narrative, and they don't find them, so they have to go out and start faking these missing links. That's why you had things like the Piltdown Man, Lucy, the Dino Bird, and the Dino Bird was one that is the imagery remains, even though Nat Geo said, you know, we're sorry, we displayed that before we really fully investigated it, and now we found out it's fraud. But the whole Dino Bird theory just took, and so people are like, yeah, it came from dinosaurs that went extinct, then evolved into birds. You know, that makes perfect sense. When something goes extinct, usually they evolve into something else.
I got a question, Josh, about the hoaxes.
Yeah.
How many hoaxes are there that are actually used as evidence or proof in textbooks for evolution that you can think of?
Well, that's the one that was the big one. The narrative, you know, natural selection, these pepper moths, because of pollution. I just found out that's over textbooks. They were gluing dead moths to parts of trees that they didn't inhabit and taking pictures of them to come up with that. And so it's been exposed. That's fraudulent. But any bone fragment of old or dead organisms that they found, fossils, they'll just kind of piece them together. It's always, you'll notice it's always fragments. Well, here's we've fully reassembled as many of the bone parts as we can, and an artist has come in and made what we believe is a missing link. And so it's always just bone fragments. So you don't really have to find much of anything. You can just find some bone fragments and get an artist to sort of piece that together. But golly, the moths, the Dino Bird, the Piltdown Man, he was in a museum for like 40 years as a beloved missing link. And so when those don't work out, they make new ones. And so I started looking at some of the ones from the 1800s because that's when a lot of this stuff was created, the dinosaurs and all of that. Once you create the theory, you can start finding the evidence, and that's what they did. They created the theory, started making their own evidence, kind of like with the globe, putting a lot of things out there that seem to make sense, but they fall apart when you investigate them. And one of those is the evolution of the horse. So you have the horse and man. Those are two that they really try. They don't do it for every organism, but the horse is a big one. And so I've been investigating that like crazy because it just seemed laughable when I was looking at the different transitional kinds. They give you a list of all the different ones. Let me see if I can find the list. Actually, I don't have that picture, but they go from smaller to larger. Let me see if I can pull up that particular slide. I don't know if I put it in this presentation. Maybe I didn't. I think I might have left it out. But yeah, they go from smaller to larger, with Eohippus being one of their earlier ancestors to your modern day horse, what your typical horse is. These things were like 2 feet tall. And so I started looking at their structure of their skeletons, and they looked very familiar. They looked very similar to like a capybara, one of these water loving organisms that live in a forest, basically a giant rodent. And these things are still alive today. And so I'm looking at their skeletons. They're the same size, same height. And I started noticing there were a lot of fish around the fossils that they find of these things. And not only that, we have other creatures that are very similar as well that are also a type of rodent that are still alive today. And so I started comparing their bone structures because we're told that this little guy has 4 toes in the front. Okay. He's a missing link to a horse, but he doesn't have hooves. He has 4 hooved toes, they call them, in the front and 3 in the back. And here's another little recent fossil, and look, it is even catching a little fish when it died. And so showing off his little catch, and he died with a fish just like the other one. Fisherman, or there was a flood. But you look at the feet on these creatures, they have 4 toes in the front and freakishly enough, 3 toes in the back. I don't know of any other organisms I've seen that have that characteristic, but these do. And so I think, this is my theory, people can investigate this themselves, is that he took a either an old bone, fossil from one of these creatures that might have died during the flood, or just one of these in general and learned how to make a fossil out of it, like fake fossils, because he was very greedy, the guy that found this, and him and this other guy had like 75% of their work proven fraudulent, but it's still in text. They discovered so many different species of dinosaur, and out of the number that they discovered, like 24% were proven authentic or allegedly proven authentic. But I think once you've got 75% fraud, you need to have the rest of your work just thrown out altogether. But there they are, and here's the hind leg of the other creature. He's got 3 little toes. Isn't he adorable? 3 toes in the back, 4 in the front. It looks like he's doing a little salute. Like, here, look at my 3 toes.
Hey, what's up, y'all? How y'all doing?
Cute little hand, though. That front paw looks like Gizmo from, what was that old movie? Little Gizmo, the Gremlins series.
Yeah.
Cute little guy. But they look more similar to this guy who just happened to be dying around a lot of fish. Have you ever seen a land animal die and have like 12 fish around it? And the thing that I think is funny is that when you look at more of those fossils, they're all in the exact same pose, and they all have fish except for a couple. But the best way to have fish laying around a dead body is for a flood to happen, fish be swimming around in the water's reed, and then the fish would be like, oh no, I can't swim, and they would die where they were when the water down. You're going to have fish in large clumps when that happens because they're together. So this is more likely evidence of blood and water receding, and not a missing link to a horse. And so that whole missing link to a horse narrative falls apart when you start investigating with just this one alone. This is their first one. The right next to the final, that one they say on modern, discounted as a missing link. So you really only have 2. But just like old fossils have fish swimming around, landing right where these bodies are on these land organisms. Here we go. So yeah, that was from a guy, Onthiel Marsh, I believe was his name. Yeah, Marsh and his allies in the U.S. Geological Survey. It says they were accused of corruption and the incompetence and misuse of government funds, and that he was investigated, and eventually they slashed funding. Why would they slash funding if there was no corruption found? Okay, they slashed funding because they found corruption. So lots of
that's how the Smithsonian in there in the mix.
Yeah, the Smithsonian was a part of it too. But these people they had a lot of funding behind them because they were producing all the fraud. There you go. There's the picture I was looking for earlier. So you can get rid of Eohippus, who was allegedly 33. There's their number, 33 million years ago. And then 30 million years ago, Mesohippus. I haven't had a chance to investigate these yet. I'm sure they fall apart too, because you only find like 1 or 2 of their skeletons, and they have the same size and shape as those other creatures we were looking at, the capybara and whatnot. So that's some of their biggest proofs. And when you investigate them, they will fall apart continually. Okay, so I don't want to go too much more into the evidence. I know we've been kind of going quite a while in this stream, but there was another.
You can say something for part 2.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we can save it. But yeah, we didn't get to look at the video with the ice rings. That was a cool one because ice rings are another one where they say the world is provably at least hundreds of thousands of years old. Doesn't have to be millions.
Yeah, there's like those big numbers, millions, trillions, billions.
Yeah. So that's saying over and over and over, trying to get you to believe it, and it's worked. And it's a very good tactic. It's from a psychological perspective. That's something that works throughout history. We've seen that work. So definitely something to children from and show them the evidence and design. And that's one I'm mad about is designing. Maybe he helped me create a website because I'm thinking about doing this. I don't know what my career is going to be like next year. I've applied for different science teaching jobs, but I think the whole creation, my beliefs, that truth is out there, people know it. So
I can barely hear you, brother. You're cutting out pretty bad.
I'm cutting out. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few months with my job. Sorry about the internet.
It could be my end actually.
Yeah.
Never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate it. You're cutting out a lot. All right, I got a couple more questions for you. Hopefully it doesn't cut out after I ask them. How many different flavors from your research of evolution are there? Because you hear people say, "Oh, it came from primordial soup, or fish, or monkeys, or whatever else." How many have you found in your research?
Man, there's so many different things they say. They try to make evolution a creator without saying that's what they're doing. Because when you start talking about the first life, they're like, well, that's just this magical moment. We really don't know what happened. Evolution doesn't say that, but you're making it a creator of all life. It has to say that. It has to be involved in creating this first life. Well, they say, well, it took a lot of time. Well, when you have the things that make life, time does not do them very well. You leave them exposed to the elements, time actually does worse, does damage. Things degrade with time. So adding time doesn't really help. But there's so many different. There's microevolution, which is small changes over time. You're not really seeing a change in kind. You're seeing like bacteria have resistance to things, and
macroevolution is obviously not true.
But that's things that we cause. That's what we're causing. We're causing that microevolution. We're causing that to happen with all the over medication. We're not seeing ever. Are we seeing a bacteria become a different type of bacteria? That's never happening. And we're seeing these things reproduce, by the millions every day, and they're remaining the same. So we're not seeing it ever on any level. But yeah, there's so many different types of, I guess there's a level to how devout people are when it comes to this. And I guess it all stems back to that Big Bang and that the world that we live on. Without that, this all just
it's all connected. All connected. Yeah. Somebody did have a question in the chat that was very interesting. Let me throw it up on the screen real quick. They said,
ask away. Any questions?
My question is, how come all of our forests worldwide are no older than 300 years old, but they claim ancient life without proof of evidence?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Every now and again, they'll say that they're like, this tree was here and Jesus walked the earth, 1,000 years old. And there are some mad trees. I'm going to go down and look at, that's a really good question. Yeah, they don't say there's never like the remnant of a tree, except for those petrified trees that we now know could happen pretty quickly. They're like, those were millions of years old. Those trees were fossilized. Some became rocks, petrified. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, forest. It's weird how trees die. I'm thinking about that. It's like, at what point is a tree like, okay, I'm just old, I'm gonna die now? Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
so they don't have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and all that to worry about. You're just like, it's time for me to go, buddy.
They die from different things than us.
Seen enough sunrises, sunsets.
Time to fall over.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll through and see questions too.
Yeah, I'm looking for some. I apologize for the lag. I'm thinking it might be my end and not Josh.
Yeah. I can do a test live stream after this is over, like a off air, and see what happens.
I'm interested in the results from that, but I suspect it might be my end. Even though there's a lot of people on your Wi-Fi, so
yeah.
I don't see any questions, so I guess we'll jump off here, and I apologize again for the issues with the stream.
Yeah, I hope it wasn't too bad.
Extremely important topic, and I'll go back and review it, and if it looks bad enough, we might come back and redo it again.
Yeah, we could redo it, man. Set everything up.
So I appreciate you jumping on, Josh, as always.
No problem. Good to see everybody, even if it didn't come out clearly. Effed up world in the house.
Yep, there's a lot of folks in the chat. Thanks, everybody. Hope everybody that keeps us with us watching have an amazing rest of your Shabbat. And we're going to say deuces. Y'all have a blessed day.